Hello, and welcome to this Defra podcast designed to help you prepare your business for the transition period. In this podcast, we're looking at the subject of funding for farmers. Now, as you probably know, agricultural policy is a devolved matter for each individual nation in the United Kingdom, and this will continue to be the case in the future. So in this podcast, we'll highlight where there is a UK-wide position. Otherwise, much of the content is focused on England. To help guide us, I'm joined by Ellen Shepherd from Defra's farming team. Thanks for joining us, Ellen. So to start off, can you give a general overview of the administration of funding for farmers?
Hello, Carl. So yes, currently funding schemes run under the EU's Common Agricultural Policy, or CAP, are administered by the UK government and the UK administrations representing Northern Ireland, Scotland and Wales. As you said in your introduction, agriculture will remain devolved. Once we're outside the EU, each of the UK administrations will have the flexibility to develop agricultural policy suited to their own unique circumstances.
So what has the government said so far about funding in the future?
The government has pledged to provide the same cash total in funds for farm support until the end of this Parliament, and this applies to all farm support and covers the whole country. The Chancellor of the Exchequer back in December also announced £2.85 billion of funding to allow Defra and the UK administrations to maintain direct payments for 2020 at the same level as they are for 2019. And these will continue to be made in the same way in England through the basic payment scheme. Individuals can also still apply for countryside stewardship agreements in England, enabling them to secure longer term funding while the system gradually changes. And finally, the government also accepted the recommendations of the review by Lord View of Donegal. So in addition to the sums already received, the Scottish Government will also receive a further £25.7 million in the next 2 financial years, and the Welsh Government will receive a further £2.6 million in both years. And this will be ring-fenced to be spent on farmers in Scotland and Wales, respectively.
So there will be some continuity for farmers this year?
Yes, that's right. Not much will change immediately. Things will just carry on until at least the end of the implementation period at the end of December this year.
And what will happen after this year?
The UK will leave the Common Agricultural Policy as it leaves the EU, and under the withdrawal agreement, the UK will continue to participate in EU annual budgets in 2020. However, funding for direct payments in 2020 will come from the UK Treasury, and as I've mentioned, we've announced £2.85 billion to maintain 2020 direct payment funding at the same level as 2019. And we'll be using the same exchange rate we used in 2019 when making payments in 2020.
So when will the level of direct payments for 2020 in each part of the UK be set?
Each part of the UK will set its own level of direct payments for 2020 using existing EU rules. And these rules enable up to 15% of the direct payments budget to be used for rural development. The government will confirm those overall levels of direct payments for England shortly.
In future, will funding levels go down?
Funding for future years will be a decision for future fiscal events. However, as mentioned, the government has pledged to continue to commit the same cash total in funds for farm support until the end of this Parliament. We plan to phase out direct payments in England during a transition period from 2021 to 2027. All farmers will see some reductions from the start of the transition, and we will be applying reductions in a fair way, with higher reductions initially applied to amounts in higher payment bands. Defra also wants to de-link direct payments. De-linking removes the requirement to farm the land in order to receive payments. Farmers will have a choice in how they use their de-linked payments. For instance, to invest in improving the productivity of their farm, to diversify their business, or to retire from farming.
Can you tell me a bit more about this opportunity to get a de-linked payment?
Yes, de-linking direct payments removes the requirement to farm the land to receive these payments during the agricultural transition period. This will allow farmers to access their payments easily and will bring real simplification. It sends a clear signal that we're leaving behind the CAP, a system that's restricted the way in which farmers have been able to manage their land and that's been bogged down by bureaucracy. And it gives farmers much greater flexibility to plan for the future, as they can choose how they use the money received to best suit their circumstances. Some farmers might choose to contribute to their retirement from farming, helping new entrants get into the industry. Others might choose to use this money to adapt or expand their business. We will consult farmers on the detail of how de-linked payments will work before deciding when we'll introduce them.
How about funding received through the Rural Development Programme, or RDP? Will there be changes made to this?
So again, the Rural Development Programme, or RDP, is administered by each nation in the UK. Under the withdrawal agreement, Defra will continue to deliver the RDP in England under the terms of the EU regulations. So it remains the case that all projects where funding has been agreed before the 31st of December 2020 will be fully funded for their lifetime. For multi-year agri-environment and forestry agreements, domestic funding will be used to honour commitments once EU funding ceases after programme closure. We're also currently offering a minimum of £35 million to rural businesses, including farmers, through the RDP Growth Programme. Expressions of interest for project support need to be received by the Rural Payments Agency by the 16th of February. And in addition to this, we're aiming to run another round of the popular Countryside Productivity Small Grant Scheme later this year too.
Will there be any changes to the Countryside Stewardship Scheme?
The next application round for Countryside Stewardship in England will open in February, with agreement starting on the 1st of January 2021. There's also a hedgerow and boundary grant and woodland creation grant, which are capital grants, available this year. And signing a countryside stewardship agreement gives farmers and landowners a viable long-term source of income for providing environmental benefits.
And will there be money for the Catchment Sensitive Farming Partnership, which is also funded by the Rural Development Programme?
Catchment Sensitive Farming is a successful partnership between Defra, the Environment Agency, and Natural England. It works with farmers and a range of other partners to improve water and air quality in high priority areas across England. The partnership offers farmers free training, local advice and support for grant applications. Farm advice is available now, and you can search for the information on your local Catchment Sensitive Farming officer on gov.uk.
Now, on the trade side of things, under CAP, some organisations benefit from the EU Common Market Organisation schemes. What will happen to these schemes once we leave the EU?
So these schemes are being rolled over as part of the EU withdrawal bill. The Agriculture Bill, which was introduced to Parliament earlier this month, will allow us to create domestic schemes and will consult on our plans.
So as you phase out direct payments, will we see any new funding schemes being introduced?
Yes, the government will nationally pilot a new Environmental Land Management Scheme, or ELM for short. The pilot will begin in late 2021 and run for 3 years until ELM is launched in late 2024 and rolled out across England. And to support the development of the ELM scheme, we're undertaking a number of tests and trials, working with a range of stakeholders, including farmer groups, representative bodies and non-governmental organisations. The tests and trials will cover different geographies and different sectors. We've agreed to fund 44 phase 1 tests and trials. 39 have already been contracted, and of these, 38 are live. Funding of over £5 million has already been awarded. We're actively engaging with 26 further proposals under phase 2. ELM will reward individuals with public money for public goods, for example, clean and plentiful water, clean air, thriving plants and wildlife, the reduction in and protection from environmental hazards, adaptation to and mitigation of climate change, and beauty, heritage and engagement with the environment. ELM will also put farmers, foresters and other land managers more in control of how they use their assets to deliver public goods. Alongside ELM, Defra will also invest in supporting farmers to improve productivity, plant health and animal welfare. We plan to tell you more about our plans later this year.
And I think there are also a lot of other broader government schemes which could also help farmers.
Yes, that's right. We're also working with the Ministry of Housing, Communities and Local Government to develop ways in which the UK Shared Prosperity Fund will support the rural economy. More information on this will be released later in the year once we've consulted with other government departments. Also, the government has already committed significant funding for agri-tech and innovation initiatives through the 2013 agri-tech strategy. £160 million has been invested over 5 years in the Catalyst Fund and 4 centres for agricultural innovation.
So what's happening next?
Well, we have a £90 million transforming food production initiative under the industrial strategy. This will focus on increasing the productivity, resilience and sustainability of the UK agricultural sector. The fund opened last September and you can apply for funding right now through the UK Research and Innovation. The application window will close at the end of February.
Now, we've got a lot of smaller farming businesses in the UK. Is there anything that could be particularly useful for them?
The government is providing funds up to £18.6 million of seed funding over the next 3 years to Be the Business. It is currently available and provides a tax relief to investors. Be the Business is designed to help small businesses better understand the simple changes they can make to raise their productivity.
Is there anything else we should be aware of on the trade side?
There's significant work underway to make sure that UK farmers who export can maintain access to EU markets once we leave the EU. Upholding standards is a core part of the government's approach to Brexit, and we can maintain our high standards as we negotiate new trading relationships with the EU and leading global economies. Our strong British food brand is built on the high standards to which we hold ourselves, and British farming is the backbone of our biggest manufacturing sector, food and drink, which exports £22 billion worth to over 200 countries. We've opened burgeoning markets for sheep meat in India and Japan and put British beef back on Chinese plates for the first time in 20 years. And we're helping smaller businesses to make the leap to export too, through our Food is Great campaign and by capitalising on the expert advice of the Agriculture and Horticulture Development Board. We're also investing in the Livestock Information Programme, a game-changing data tool that will support biosecurity and showcase traceability to underpin consumer confidence worldwide.
Yes, now I know many farmers are concerned about standards being diluted.
Backing better standards is a core part of the government's approach to Brexit. We can maintain our high UK standards as we negotiate new trading relationships with the EU and leading global economies.
Is there any other activity underway to support UK farmers?
We obviously want farmers to be resilient and competitive after we leave the EU, and we want to support farmers on a number of fronts. Last September in England, we announced that we are investing £1 million for agriculture sector proposals, which can provide targeted support and advice to farmers to help them improve the resilience of their businesses. If these initiatives demonstrate a strong return, Defra will consider scaling up resilience initiatives.
Now, in Britain, we always have to talk about the weather. Given the recent bad weather that's affected many farmers, what has the government done to help and support farmers affected by flooding?
The government has pledged a £2 million fund to support farmers who suffered uninsurable damage to their property in the devastating floods in November last year, and the application window opened on the 6th of January. Farmers can apply for grants between £500 and £25,000 to cover a number of repair costs, including removing debris, recultivation and replacing damaged field gates. The closing date for Wainfleet, Swaledale, Arkengarthdale and Wensleydale is 5 p.m. on the 31st of March 2020, and the closing date for South Yorkshire, Nottinghamshire, Lincolnshire, Derbyshire, Worcestershire and Gloucestershire is 5 p.m. on the 31st of July 2020.
One final question, Ellen. Will the government commit funds to develop domestic marketing campaigns to support our farming sector?
The government supports promotion of high quality, homegrown and home produced food and drink to the domestic market, as this can support local economies and provides employment and growth. During the implementation period, we'll still be subject to EU rules which don't allow us to provide financial assistance to domestic producers, and also don't allow us to advertise national products solely because of their domestic origin. However, once we leave the EU, we will be able to encourage the public sector, for instance our schools and hospitals, to buy British, supporting our farmers and reducing environmental costs. We'll continue to explore new and existing markets and expand the reach of existing Food is Great campaigns to increase demand for UK food and drink in priority export markets, including the USA, China, Japan and the Gulf. We'll also carry out further market analysis to identify export opportunities and understand market potential, and also identify additional agri-food officials in key embassies around the world to negotiate market access and support UK exporters.
Thanks very much, Ellen. That's the end of this podcast on funding for farmers. You can find more information about what you need to do to prepare your business for the transition period at www.gov.uk/funding. environment/farming-food-grants-payments.